This is Dimitri Martin talking, and you're hearing my voice on and in relation to ShowbizMonkeys.com.
Around this town, I'm alright. Around this town, I'm alright. I mean, no consequence when you playing with the fire.
So thank you, first of all, for doing this. When I started doing stand-up comedy in Winnipeg, I feel like you were just around there a lot when I was starting. So this is a bit of a thrill for me.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm glad I can be part of the thrill.
Yeah. I completely forgot when setting this up that you're living in Alaska now.
Yes.
What's the comedy scene in Alaska like?
Oh, no, there isn't a comedy scene in Alaska. Well, I should say I live in Juno, Alaska.
Okay.
There's no comedy scene in Juno, Alaska. The population of Juno is just north of 30,000 people, very small town. It's the capital city, so it's progressive in certain ways, but it's still Alaska and a little backwards in other ways. But it's such a small town. I mean, I could probably set up an open mic night maybe every second week. But also I don't want to perform to a regular audience in a small town.
Where everyone knows you?
Yeah, you can't hide, like, whereas in Toronto, you feel like you're performing to strangers. Whereas, in Juno, I'd feel like I'm performing to the guy who's going to service my car. And,
yeah,
I'd like my car to work and operate and function properly on the road. So, there's no scene in Juno. There's a little bit of a scene in Fairbanks and Anchorage. They do a small festival up in Anchorage and in Fairbanks, Alaska. A couple of great comics, Glenner and Jerry, that run stuff in the wintertime. But other than that, yeah, there's nothing going on.
No, I've heard a lot of the more northern communities are now starting to set up festivals and things to fly people up.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, people obviously, probably love the entertainment and they're starved for something. But it's hard to get people up just financially on a regular basis. And the wintertime's the only time that people are probably going to go out, because once summer hits way up north, everyone's outside kayaking and hiking and, doing something to escape the misery of winter. So, yeah, it would only make sense to do like a festival in the winter and, get comics up.
Do you feel like you've moved to the most Canadian of the American states?
No, I don't. I feel like a place like Portland, Oregon or Vermont, Burlington, Vermont, those are cities and states that feel like the most Canadian. No, Alaska still feels like it's a red state, so not that, I don't know. I just feel like the conservative approach in the United States is much different than the Canadian conservative approach, although that's probably changing. But no, it feels like America here for sure.
Okay. You're someone who's really had a foothold in both places, I feel like equally, Canada and the States, for a long time. Was that a conscious decision, or is that just sort of necessity?
Well, I don't know if I've had a foothold in both. I mean, Canada is still where I can tour and make a little bit more money and have an audience that will, really great audience members that will come out time and time again, like at Rumors in Winnipeg. I'm very fortunate that people come out again and again. So depending on what you mean by foothold, I mean, I have experience performing in both countries for a long time. But Canada still feels like home. What was the question?
I was just thinking, like, I was watching Humour Resources again, and the comedians who were able to pull out for that was pretty equal America, Canada.
Yeah, that was the goal. There were a variety of reasons why we decided to cast who we did. And part of it, of course, was, we were making it for the CBC. So, a large group had to be Canadian, and we wanted that anyway. But yeah, I had to call in some favors from friends and people I've met along the way. I think it helped that the pandemic had isolated everyone. That was early pandemic as well, where there was, everything was shut down. It was takeout only. There were no vaccines available. There was no hope for the future. So I think that helped our cause as well, to get people like Sarah Silverman and, Eric Andre, because we paid them pennies, comparatively speaking, for their time. Yeah, it was a really hard show to make. Very small crew.
Was it a small crew because of Alaska or because of COVID or both?
Little bit of both, mostly financial. I mean, if we could have afforded it, we would have had a much larger crew in place, but we pretty much did it. I did a lot of the location scouting myself for the things that we needed to do in Alaska. But for the most part, it was, this guy, Gabe Strong, great human being. He was he did everything. He lugged equipment around. He lit the set. He shot it. He rigged cameras to cars. And we had an assistant, Luke, and we eventually expanded and we had another assistant, Jordan. And that was pretty much it. There was 3 crew members and myself running around a forest, getting attacked by a bear that we added in CGI afterwards. So, I mean, for people who don't know, it's the show's called Humour Resources, aired on the CBC with very little promotion. And I was the HR manager for stand-up comedians. It was pretty light and down the middle. We weren't trying to, sabotage anyone or really hold them accountable. I was the idiot trying to hold them accountable for, discretions that they'd made on social media or concerns that I flagged in their transcripts of their performances. So, it was a big show to do. And I think I'm very proud of that show. Not a lot of people saw it, but very proud of it.
It's great. I was also going to ask if your family is featured in the show pretty prevalently. How much of that was out of necessity and how much of that was design?
Yeah, well, a little bit of both for sure. Like Emma, I had been doing. So Emma is my girlfriend's daughter from a previous relationship. And I've been raising her since she's 4.5. She was probably 6.5 when we did Humour Resources. So I've been making these videos and posting them to Instagram, and people seem to relate to them and enjoy them. So she was actually part of the pitch because we had to shoot the CBC was looking for programming. I mean, they had lost hockey for the time being. They'd lost the Olympics, so they didn't have a lot of programming. So they were eager to finance something. And so, we just thought, well, how can we do this show and populate it with people that we're isolating with? So Emma was someone that I'd done these videos with, and those videos had existed. And so we used that as part of the pitch, and they loved it. So out of necessity. And also Emma was just brilliant and perfect. I love working with her. She's my kid, but I do enjoy working with her as well. And then Christina, we weren't sure, I knew that she would be great. But for someone who's never acted before, my partner was in a few episodes and she was wonderful as well. So it was little parts born out of necessity, but also, it's hard to cast people in Juno. There's not a big scene either. So
is Emma really into that kind of stuff now? Have you kind of educated her on comedy?
Well,
do you consider her the straight man?
I don't know. I mean, for the purposes of the videos that I make online, I'm definitely the punching. Well, no, online she's the punching bag. In the television show, I'm the punching bag. Yeah. That's one difference. But there's an element of innocence, but she'll also repeat the action and do it again and have it be very believable. And I think most people think that those videos are just purely her saying it for the first time, when a lot of time it's not. So Emma's now 9 years old and she's pretty with it. She's very smart and she gets it, and she hasn't lost any of her innocence, but she also is, pretty sly when it comes to being funny. She knows how to make me laugh in a very adult, in a very intellectual way. Sometimes she'll make me laugh. I'm trying to think she'll often imitate me in a sarcastic tone, which is endlessly hilarious. Yeah. So her big thing now. And she doesn't laugh afterwards, which is also very funny. That's the sign of a comedian, just making the joke, letting other people laugh. So she'll do things like, "Hi, my name's John. Where's my coffee? Where's my car keys? Da, da, da." So which is endlessly entertaining when it comes from a 9-year-old.
Oh, of course. Mm-hmm. Working for a Canadian network, but shooting in America. I know a lot of streaming networks, when you pitch them stuff, they want to have it be a more of an international production. Do you think that helped you?
No, not at all. If anything, it hurt us, because Canada, they were looking for reasons. We need points for shooting in Canada. Yeah, it would have been much easier if I was living in Canada to make the show. We had to shoot in Juno, but we set the show in, I can't even remember, Squamish, British Columbia. Oh. So if there's you'll see signs that say Squamish in the background occasionally. We had to send a crew to Squamish, British Columbia to go and shoot exteriors of establishing shots. to double as Juno. So yeah, I had to put in a couple Canadian flags, Canadian references here and there. So
Yeah.
if anything, it hurt us that we were shooting in Juno. It's because it was CBC. We're using government money. We had to cheat the government a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. You're up for a Juno for Best Comedy Album. Do you feel like this is a step in the right direction of Canada getting a star system that's a little bit easier for people working in the country?
Like the Juno Awards themselves? Or...
Yeah, well, just acknowledging our own comedians, because it's a pretty new category in the Junos. Yep. Do you feel like Canada's opening up to a star system, or?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't really give that much thought. I don't think so. Not in the way. I think the idea of a star system is kind of falling apart anyway. It's just, a lot of this, fragmented media landscape that we live in produces people in different ways, and they pop up through different social media platforms and streaming services and Twitch and YouTube. Like people can create their own followings and be popular in different ways. So I think a star system itself, doesn't really exist anymore in the way that it used to. And I think especially in Canada, no, it's pretty much the same. I mean, Canada's it's tough to do things in Canada, and it's great at the same time, because the reasons why things become popular in Canada aren't always because the fans love it. It's just, it makes sense for their programming money that comes in these envelopes, different categories. So, sometimes they just do a show over and over again and it doesn't have a lot of views, but other times something can be great and not get made. So yeah, Canada's a mystery to me as far as I think certain things succeed and others don't.
Do you think that the conservative tone of the country just kind of breeds really silly people as far as comedians?
I've never been able to answer that question. I don't know. I think it's an assumption. Like, there are funny people in Canada, yes, but there's funny people everywhere. I don't know. I mean, I think that's what you're asking, right? Like, why are there so many funny people from Canada, or why does Canada breed?
Well, I also find that the comedians tend to be like sillier based people. Like I think of you and Sean Cullen, and maybe that's also me coming from Winnipeg, is I find a lot of really silly comedians come out of there, where it's not just straight stand up almost.
Right. Well, that's interesting. But I'd argue that those people exist in the United States as well. But yes, I think generally speaking, oh God, it's so weird and hard to understand. I mean, I haven't given it a lot of thought, but I do agree there's a lot of silliness that comes out of Canada, which is great, because it's not, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of, political and socially relevant comedians, but I feel like it's much more so in the United States. There's such a strong political approach to stand-up comedy in the States. Although that's, look at it like look at Mr. Show. To me, it's the greatest comedy program ever made. And I think they did a little bit of both, but they never took their foot off the gas when it came to silly. They were always silly no matter what. But I feel like in Canada, I don't know. Yeah, we're a bunch of drunks and funny people in Canada, or maybe more so we were. I don't know anymore. But like, there was a time when everyone was funny. Everyone loved telling jokes. Everyone loved being the idiot at the party. Like, we're just all surrounded by funny people, and the way you'd riff with your friends would be funny. And then I used to see that on stage a lot more in Canada, just kind of people traveling the country and making funny jokes. And it was just a very silly approach. It didn't seem like there was stand-up comedy was a means to an end, where it felt like when I first moved to the United States, it was definitely for a lot of people a means to an end. Like, let me get 5 minutes and be funny and get a sitcom or something. I don't think that exists as much anymore.
Yeah.
In Canada, I felt like, for the most part, if you were a road warrior in Canada, you were just going from Winnipeg to Kamloops to Saskatchewan, and then you were just driving all over the country, telling jokes to 200 people in some small town. And that was good. That was your life. It was perfect that way.
You kind of touched on it, but I was going to say the album that you're nominated for is under your sister's label.
That's right.
What was it like growing up with a second funny person in the house? Or I don't know how funny your parents were, but the fact that two people pursued it.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it depends what period of time you're asking about. Like, when we were young, it was great. We were hooked on praise for doing silly things. Our parents would laugh and reward us with praise for being silly. I think towards high school, I was definitely like a little more of a depressed human being, just wondering what I'm going to do with my life. So I don't think it was all that funny. But yeah, later on in life, my sister and I were a great team. Loved making jokes. The dinner table was a place to just be silly and try and get my parents to laugh, and again, get their approval. But my parents were also, funny people. My dad's definitely funny. My mom's funny. Yeah. But what was it like growing up? Yeah, it was wonderful. My sister and I, my fondest memories are making my sister laugh for sure. Hearing her laugh. Yeah.
Was there competition for that in the household?
Never felt that way to me. No, you'd have to ask my sister. I might be overlooking it, but to me, it always felt like she was trying to get me. I was trying to get her in the best sense.
And I also feel like this is your most personal album or hour that you've ever put out.
It's the only album I've ever put out. Yeah. But I agree with you. You can it's silly, but it's definitely, probably the most personal. Yeah. There's some honesty there. You can guess my politics with certain jokes as well.
Right. But also you're talking about like having a seizure. Now you're a dad and moving to Alaska. Has this like changed your comedy in any way, or your approach, or your voice? Yeah. Do you feel like you're in a new era?
Yes. And like, let's say I never moved to Alaska, maybe I would still be looking at stand-up comedy the same way. But absolutely, I'm telling much more personal stories for sure. Like my next album will be, I really enjoy the experience of, crafting material and putting an album out. I'd never done it, and I love it. And so the next album is even more personal for sure. Yeah. It is all about, this album was more about worrying about being a dad. This is kind of celebrating, but also being frustrated with the idea of being a dad.
And even Humour Resources, I feel like the baseline of the show was always just trying to find a work-life balance. Yeah. Was that just autobiographical at the time? And like, how is your work-life balance now?
At the time it was. I mean, we wanted to comment on pandemic life, and like the Humour Resources show, every single camera shot you see in the show is motivated by cameras that exist in our life. So it's either the Alexa device, the computer, a phone from the dashboard of the car. You'll never see, unless it's an establishing shot, you will never see a shot in that show that isn't motivated by these cameras that live in our lives. And so we wanted to kind of capture the feeling of living in a pandemic and how you manage work-life balance, because, schools aren't open. Most people aren't having people come into the house to help out as a nanny. Like everything falls on the parents if they have kids. So yeah, it was definitely something we wanted to write about because we thought it would resonate well with viewers. And what was the second part to your question? Pardon me?
Just how is your work-life balance now?
Oh, it's hell on earth now.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So prior to my son being born a year ago, just over a year ago, it was myself, my partner, Christina, and Emma, and life was pretty good. I could see the future. Emma's getting older. We're starting to free ourselves up, and then boom, baby comes along. And now, it's hell on earth. It's impossible. He does not go to sleep unless he's being held. He doesn't work well. Jackson does not work well with nannies. So we struggle a lot. And you got a taste of that just before we started recording this.
Yeah.
I had Jackson in my arms. Christina's sick. Taking time out to do this interview. I mean, it is going to crush my relationship for the rest of the day. But that's okay. We'll figure it out. But it is hard because you can't predict what, the sensibilities and personality of a baby. And Jackson, he needs a lot right now. So no work-life balance, forget it. It's out the window. I haven't worked in 3 months. Now I'm really ranting. I have not been on the road. So I am stay-at-home dad for the time being while Christina's working. And don't get me wrong, she still does a hell of a lot. But
of course.
I'm staying home, not working. So once I go on the road, that's going to be awful too, because I'm going to miss him. And I'm also going to hear it from Christina.
Right. Has sleep deprivation been helping you be more creative, or?
Oh, God, I'll be honest, I have not been writing that much. Like I'll text myself ideas, but no, it doesn't. Sleep deprivation is not helping at all.
Okay.
Because you have to take advantage of your rest. Like the second he goes down to sleep, you think, now's my chance to work. But if you
Right.
don't take advantage of that time to rest as well, anything can happen. This kid could wake up with a fever, and before you know it, you're not going to sleep for 24 hours. So, no, it's just constantly, it's just worry. It's just panic and worry. Don't have children.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
If I take anything away from this interview, it'll be that.
Well, good.
You are a very like silly person on stage. Does that take a lot of writing and just iron nerve?
I don't even know. Well, no, I mean, I think I'm a silly person for the most part. This interview is pretty, straightforward, and I appreciate this too. Like, this is a fun way to think about, your life and what you do. Fun way to speak about it. But no, I think I'm a pretty silly person for the most part. Yeah. So that would just be, me times 1,000 on stage,
Okay.
And it's fun. I mean, that's the way I'd behave with my friends. That's the way I would behave. Yeah. When I'm on stage, you're getting a glimpse into me hanging out with my closest friends, making ridiculous statements and comments, and trying to make them laugh. That's exactly what you're getting when I'm on stage.
I noticed a thing like even the Jon Dore show and a big questions, huge answers. So it's got an element of interviewing. Is there something in particular you love about that?
Yes, absolutely. I love extracting information in a funny way. And I love playing the idiot. It's just really fun to be, I mean, it's probably Ali G inspired, or Daily Show back in the day inspired, but there's something really fun about pretending to be dumb enough. You can get away with more. That's an advantage, but also you're illuminating, you're shining a light on, stereotypes about the world. If I have those and think that way, and I look to experts to show me something different, that's a fun part of doing interviews. It's also a great way to eat up some time without it's cheaper. Like to do 2.5 to 3 minute interviews 3 times in an episode of the Jon Dore Show. I mean, you're looking at 6 minutes of television that was set up and shot in a morning. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. Did you have to train yourself to almost sit in that uncomfortable space?
No, that's my favorite place to be. Yeah, I like it when I feel like I have license to be uncomfortable. Because with the Jon Dore Television Show, we would tell everyone, we wouldn't give them the questions, but we tell everyone and remind them that I'm an idiot and I don't know any better. And that's why you're here. You're the expert that's going to inform me.
Yeah.
So I could get away with just about anything. I never felt like it was uncomfortable. And if it was uncomfortable, I'd lean into it more.
Just a few like random ones. I have to know, what was it like getting interviewed by Larry King?
Oh, geez, I forgot about that. He was great. He was very sweet. Yeah, that was for our show, Big Questions, Huge Answers. The only reason that happened was we had a great publicist at the time that arranged the interview. Yeah, that was for that Comedy Central special we did. It was great. It's a bit of a blur. I barely remember what we talked about. But that was his online show. And He could not have been sweeter or funnier. He was great.
Because I feel like near the end of his career, he was interviewing a lot of comedians. And I didn't necessarily know if he knew who they were when he was talking to them.
He definitely would not have known who I was until he had read the press release breakdown for our show, for sure. But he was very sweet, very kind, and just personable. And after the interview, like he works well with his staff. You could tell he is not only a pro and a veteran, but like a very sweet, funny, good guy. Yeah, it was great to hear. Yeah, it was refreshing.
Some of your best stuff online is your Conan sets with Rory Scovel or the Centaur one. How much of that, like, did you have to pitch that to them ahead of time?
Everything I've done, I've had to pitch to them. So the booker, JP Buck, he was the one booking stand-up comedy. And my agent at the time would start a conversation, and then I'd submit a tape, or he'd come see me at Just for Laughs or something. First off, he said, "Hey, we got to get you on the show." So I was originally going to do the NBC show until Conan lost that show. Back to Jay Leno, and then
you were the first comic back, I think, for the Conan iteration on TBS.
Yeah. So I've been talking with JP Buck, and we've been working on that set for a long time. And then, so once I did my first one, then I kind of had a open door. Well, I was able to approach JP and say, hey, I have something else. I'd love to show it to you. And then I'd either send him a tape or he'd come out to the Improv in LA and I'd show it to him. And then, yeah, you'd either get notes or you wouldn't, and you'd go back and forth. But yeah, no, you'd have to prove yourself. And then JP would have to go and pitch it to Conan and Jeffrey Ross, the executive producer, and they'd have to sign off on it. And there was a couple of risky ones in there. But yeah, that was that process.
This is a really deep cut, but I think the other person in the horse costume was Levi McDougall.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were hoping that it would be Matthew Broderick. That was the big one, was at the end when the centaur costume comes apart. It was Matthew Broderick back there the whole time. So only to use him at the very end to wave and say goodnight. I thought,
oh, that's awesome.
But it wasn't able to work out. So, but yeah, Levi McDougall, yeah, another Canadian comedian, writer for the Conan show. You've
had such a bizarre career in it's just diverse. Do you have any particular for you career highlights?
Oh my God. Sure. I mean, so far, I hope they're still coming. Yeah, I'm happy with everything. I mean, I studied TV broadcasting at Algonquin College in Ottawa, solidified what I wanted to do, work in television and write and be creative and be surrounded by creative people. So first show I did out of that was daytime television. It was called Daytime on Rogers Community. It was a cable access show. And so I did that for 3 years. And some of that is the most fun I've ever had. Just being able to interview people every day for an hour about weird, the Garlic Festival or, something local, or an author coming through town like Pierre Burton it was, that was amazing. And then I put a demo tape together of all the silly stuff I did there. And that got me a job on Canadian Idol for 3 seasons as a weird correspondent. So that was a ball. I got to travel the country, and I loved that show. Yeah, I got to do my own show. I mean, I'm very fortunate, very lucky, and they're all highlights. And then moving to Los Angeles and working on pilots and doing, a network show for a while. Those are all fun, just to see how that world works. Yeah, it's all been fun. I feel very, very lucky and fortunate. And yeah, hopefully I can just keep, getting lucky, because I don't want to do anything else. Jackson needs shoes. So
yeah. Well, I'll let you get back to Jackson. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, Andrew, this has been great. Thank you. Very thoughtful. I appreciate it.
And good luck with the Junos.
Hey, thank you very much. A Person Who is Gingerbread. Stream it. Listen to it.